Welcome to the Taboo podcast from Las Vegas. This is the podcast series where you hear taboo truths and taboo tales. Which do you think is which? This is episode 1 of season 9. The title of this episode is A Tragic Hollywood Princess. This episode is an interview.
Hey there, I'm your humble podcast interviewer, and I also created this series. My guest today is author Frederick Schofield. He's written a taboo tale about a Hollywood princess murdered by the mafia, which is tied to a Panamanian dictator. A real mashup, to be sure. So the taboo is writing about a dead person and changing the story, okay? It's based on the legendary Grace Kelly, an Academy Award-winning actress who appeared in Alfred Hitchcock movies. She left Hollywood to marry a prince on the French Riviera. And this story does not have a Hollywood ending. It's a twisted story at best, and best explained by author Frederick Schofield in his own words. Here we go.
It was a story that I think you're going to enjoy. Our story takes a look at the connection with the Philadelphia Mafia family. The Run to Hell story, which is a story that starts with Grace Kelly, but moves on to Manuel Noriega because the Philadelphia mob family moved on to Manuel Noriega after Grace's death. Part one, we deal with Grace until she is murdered, her brother is murdered, and her brother-in-law is murdered. The story then takes you down to Panama, where we take a look at Manuel Noriega and what happens in that country.
If you could talk about how Grace Kelly came into your life. You said she met you knew your father. Why don't you start there and talk about how that
All
happened?
right. Now, thinking back on Grace, my father lived next door to the Kelly family. And let me introduce you, before you meet Grace, let me introduce her father, because he is a fantastic figure. Grace's father, the senior Kelly, was a bricklayer. He was not a man with a profession. He was a great profession. He grew up as a bricklayer, but he ended up owning the largest construction company, in Philadelphia. He ended up as a multimillionaire. He took his Irish family from corned beef and cabbage to caviar. And by the time my father met Grace and the East Falls section of Philadelphia, they were quite wealthy. Much more wealthy than my family. But anyway, Dad lived next door to Grace. And we remember Grace Kelly as being that thin, demure, totally beautiful young lady who was truly a lady. That was her image on the screen. And she had a lot of older leading men. I mean, Cary Grant was about 30 years older than her. All the lead men she played against were older than her because she did to those films when she was in her 20s. Grace was a tomboy. You wouldn't have expected that from someone who appeared on screen. She had certain sexuality, but it was so pure. Grace, the kind of girl that if you upset her, she beat the hell out of you. And her brother had a great story about her. Her brother, Kel, who was 2 years younger than her. Kel remembered, and my father told the story also, Grace in her backyard, and the neighborhood bully said something to her brother, and Grace picked up a stick and chased the kid out of their yard. And they told that story for years about how Grace picked up a stick and chased the bigger kid out of their yard. But she was that kind of girl. She had spunk. Now, Grace took acting lessons. She played in local theaters, including the Chestnut Hill Theater, which was a place for amateurs to put on good plays, and New Hope, the New Hope Theater, which has been around for years and has had many talents come up young and make it to New York on stage or Hollywood on screen. And Grace was involved in the theater there. She had a talent, she had a knack, she had a way of looking, she had a way of pulling it all together. And it may have been in part not because her father was a bricklayer who had become rich, but because she went to a Roman Catholic school that taught her to in some way be more demure than she would have been otherwise. Now, her father was special for this reason. The senior Jack Kelly was a bricklayer and wanted to be involved in the Olympics. His event was sculling, and he was denied admission to do sculling in the Olympics because at that time, gentlemen were deemed to be the people who should be participants, and working men, such as bricklayers, had inauthentic muscles that should not be represented as a national treasure. So the bricklayer protested and made a big deal of it, got in the Olympics and won 3 gold medals in sculling events. His son, Jack Kelly, the brother of Grace, is going to be killed. Jack also went into sculling. He won a silver medal in the sculling event when he was a teenager. Never participated again, but he did become president of the United States Olympic Committee before he was killed. He was also a city councilman, very vocal, very liberal, very much on top of his game, beloved in the city. While his sister Grace went from the local theaters to Hollywood. She gets involved in films and makes a half dozen of them, starring in them. And she was strong enough, like her father, that she wanted to do something. She wanted to appear in New York stage productions. So when she was given a contract by the studio, she had it negotiated so that she could leave 6 to 9 months a year to go off and do theater in New York, which she did. She was accomplished. She was a woman of her times. She was a woman actually beyond her time. Had no problem playing against older men like Cary Grant in To Catch a Thief, which is the thing we think of when we think of Grace. High Noon, she was in so many great productions, but we think of To Catch a Thief because she filmed that. 54, a year later, she marries the Prince of Monaco. Happened to meet him along the way, looked like a good gig. She took that one too. She became a princess. She was an Academy Award winning actress. She gave it all up for love of a guy who was a head shorter than her. When in Philadelphia, they had a reception, Pop Kelly threw it. He threw a big reception. The press came because his daughter was an Academy Award winner. A reception for Prince Rainier of Monaco and his daughter, Grace Kelly, the daughter of a bricklayer. And at the wedding reception, you could hear it loud and clear. One of the reporters from the back of the room screamed out, "Hey, he's titty high." He was that much shorter than her. And the room erupted, and they went on to have a beautiful wedding afterward, and she became Princess of Monaco. Now, you think that would be the apex of her career, but Grace didn't see it that way. Rainier thought she would sit back and not be the woman that she was, the strong woman that she was. Rainier saw her as a beauty and a gentle beauty, and he could run his little, it's not an empire, certainly. Monaco is the same geographic size, not of a postage stamp, but almost. It's the same geographic size as the park in New York. Central Park and Monaco are the same size. It has no army. The police force is on loan from France. It's an unprotected commodity. And it has a casino that makes so much money that then and now the citizenry pays no taxes. All the money comes from the casino. It runs the country. It's a great place to live. Now you have to be really wealthy to get in and become a citizen. But
were the people, was the prince and all the people proud of her as a Hollywood person, or did she take on a new identity?
Well, here's what happened. Prince Rainier, was having a problem with the casino. It wasn't making its usual draw because something called Vegas opened. And Prince Rainier needed to do something to revamp the casino. So he looked at this princess and realized she might be able to bring in her Hollywood friends, which would be attractions. And that's what she did. When her friends from Hollywood came to Cannes for the Cannes Film Festival, she invited them to Monaco, told them what a good time they would have, and made sure they were taken care of. And with that glitz came the glamour. And with the glamour of Monaco back, they revamped the casino and they brought the money back into Monaco.
Wow.
Now that becomes an attraction, not just for gamblers. It becomes an attraction for other people because remember, Monaco does not have an army. Monaco does not even have its own police force. The police force is on loan from France. Now, we all know about the mafia. I know about the mafia in Philadelphia. It started right after the 1921, I believe it was started by a fella who did everything but come up with the Philadelphia cheesesteak, very inventive fella in Philadelphia. There's also a mob family in Nice, France, which is very nearby. Our story takes a look at that mob family and the connection that they later had with the Philadelphia mafia family. And there are two things going on. The Philadelphia mafia family is notorious. In mob history, these guys are notorious. They were bloodthirsty, they were blood killers. How do you get a new leader in the Philadelphia mafia family? You kill the old one. And that's what happened. They joined up with the mob family from Nice, who decided they were going to move in on the casino because it was a money maker. It was a revenue maker. And there was nobody to defend the municipality. And Rainier was willing to walk back. Grace was not. Grace wanted to stand up to them. And that's where the story of Grace, the Nice mob family, the family from Philadelphia that ultimately is involved in the murder of her brother and the murder of her brother-in-law. That's how it all begins to shape up.
Well, what the reason why she would give up Hollywood and move to Monaco, there are stories about how Prince Rainier, was told by France that if you don't produce an heir, we're going to take all of your.
Well, that was how it was set up. That was the deal with France. Let's remember, Monaco wasn't its own territory. It belonged to France, and pirates took it over. Pirates in the 16th century take over the place. And they ultimately work out a deal with France that Monaco will remain its own principality. It will remain a principality so long as offspring are produced to continue the line. And that continued all the way up to just recently, where they've relaxed the rules on having the monarchy continue its line by giving birth to a male that can take the lead and become the prince. You don't become the king, you become the prince of Monaco.
Well, in those days, in her day, she goes over there, film festival and whatever, meets Rainier. Is it possible that he said to her, look, I need you to produce an heir? Did he say that to her in so many words? Well, I mean, why would a woman who was so well known, why would she fall for that? I mean, because I remember pictures of him. He wasn't great looking.
He's not a handsome man. No. We look better. So he was really in trouble. And she was a beauty. There was no question. She was a stunning beauty. People should go to my website, frederickschofield.com, where we have some pictures of her. She was stunningly beautiful. She was well-spoken. She was respected. And she had spark. She had the allure that Hollywood calls, Hollywood calls it allure. The rest of us call it sexuality. But she had that underlying her. She was an amazing woman, just terrific in almost every way, you would think. The little girl who was capable of picking up a stick to chase away the bully in her backyard was capable of charming anyone. And she had that knack. I think Rainier looked at her first because she was a lovely woman, but as a wife. And they married within a year of the time that Grace filmed To Catch a Thief with Cary Grant, who could have been not her father, almost her grandfather. But they played alongside each other. But I think he looked at her and said, I need to be married because I have to have children in order to continue the reign into the next generation. And I think he looked at her as beautiful, intelligent. Probably he didn't want her to be quite as, how would you put it? How do you put it when somebody's in charge of things? She was used to being in charge, maybe not with her directors, but she was used to being in charge on the set. She knew how she had to perform. She was very confident. Maybe he didn't expect to have someone as his bride who was as confident as this woman, who was willing to take a lead, and she was beloved by the principality.
Yeah.
People love her to this day. She became a postage stamp within the first year that she was the princess. She was the selling point.
She had two daughters and one son, and the one son is today the ruling monarch. Is that correct?
Yes, he is. And before she died, he bought a house, not Grace's house, not my father's house. It was the house my father grew up in, but the one next to that. He bought that house to set up a nonprofit supporting issues related to climate control. And he still has that property, and he still uses it for that purpose.
So you're saying that the mafia, whether U.S. or French, wanted to take over the casino. And what is it? Monte Casino? Is that the name? Is that the
Monte
name?
Carlo Casino. Yeah.
Well, my question is, she would stand up to anybody, obviously, and her husband, Prince Rainier,
she was fearless.
Didn't want.
She was fearless.
So
and you know something? Her brother in Philadelphia was fearless as well, because he was warned, you stay out of looking at how your sister died. You don't look into this or you're going to face trouble. And how did he face trouble? He was trying to contact the Philadelphia people in the Philadelphia Mafia associated with him. And he let them know that he was looking into this. They warned him to stop. He didn't. He continued going. And I remember even as a kid, my father talking to me about this. He went down to Fort Lauderdale, Jack, after he was warned. And he was told he would meet someone on a street corner. He was a ladies' man. Not only did he have a beautiful girlfriend named Rachel Harlow, but he had been married, had 3 children, divorced, and he was a ladies' man, very attractive, good-looking guy. Look at him on the website. He was told to meet someone on a street corner who would talk to him about this in Fort Lauderdale. We'll meet you at 3 a.m. He goes down there, he appears on the street corner, and they shot him in the groin. And he was told, that's your warning shot. He continued to investigate after that. The Kelly family was a strong family. All of them were. They all had robust lives. They enjoyed doing what they did. And it was hard to tell them, no, you can't do this or you can't do that.
Was there a trigger event where Princess Grace so pissed off the mafia and by something she said or did?
Yeah, you got to read the book. I'm trying to sell books too, you know.
Well, if you can give us a bit of a preview. I mean,
that's as far as we go. She was an amazing creature. There's no way to get around it. And no one ever has, no one ever will. She was a strong woman, a beautiful woman, and she made a mark for herself. She truly did. It's a shame that what happened to her, because her husband was willing to give in and we'll take care of it later. And she realized that if we do give in, we'll never get out of it later.
Well, and she was, the story that many people know is that she was driving her daughter to the airport, and the brakes failed, and they sailed off a cliff down the side of a very sharp incline. And it was from the Hitchcock movie, same setting, but there wasn't a car crash in the Hitchcock movie.
The movie was filmed on the Moyenne Corniche, which is a classic highway with steep ravines, very close to the roadway. And there's not guardrails there. They have a few fences made of stone at steep corners, but it's a dangerous highway. But Grace knew it well because she drove it often. And that particular day, she was driving a Martin 6700. She woke up ready to go to Paris. She had some dresses placed in the trunk of her car where she would have seamstresses in Paris mend hems, do different things to them. And she put her daughter in the car. And she didn't have a thought in the world that something might happen along that highway. The Moyenne Corniche was a dangerous road if you weren't careful, but she was always careful. There was a problem with the car. There was a problem with the car. The car went off a steep ravine. It rolled over a number of times, barreling down until she met her death. And she had her daughter with her, who suffered a fractured back, but was otherwise well. Grace goes into a hospital that was named after her in Monaco. And Prince Rainier was the one who called the hospital and told them to take Grace off life support. And how that story happens and what was on his mind is in the Run to Hell story as well. In Philadelphia, in their time, they were like the Kennedys were at the peak of their time. Well, what happened was a shame, but what happened because they were who they were. They were Jack Kelly Sr.'s children, and Jack Kelly never backed down from anything, and he was known for that.
Obviously, she died in Monaco, which is not the United States. But what role, if any, did the United States law enforcement people get involved in that investigation?
Not their issue.
So there was no U.S. involvement.
Not their issue. No, we don't have issues for former Academy Award winning starlets
And you
are
said
citizens
already,
and die in another country.
well, and you said Monaco didn't have its own police, so it was
That's right.
the French police, and they came from.
Well, actually, they were all formed in Paris. The federal government had sent over the police force and sent over whatever protection they had. Monaco does have its own guard. It's palace guard that surrounds the palace. I don't know what really they consist of or how well trained they are to do things, but they weren't trained in criminal investigation.
Hey, this is a dangerous question, I suppose, not for us, but what is the reputation of the French law enforcement, or what was it then? Were they any good at
Write about it in the book. I won't talk about. I'd rather talk about the law enforcement in Philadelphia, where people from Philadelphia were involved as well. So I heard the stories from that end too, aside from hearing it from my father's side, who knew the family, the Kelly family.
What was how many years between when she died, Princess Grace? How many years between that and when your book came out?
Oh, a lot of years, a lot of years.
Well, I don't know, 10, 15, 20.
She died in the 80s. She died in 82. Her brother, or 83. Her brother dies 2.5 years later. So it's in the 80s, and my book comes out much later.
When your book came out, what was the reaction from Philadelphia, from people that in Hollywood? Can you tell me how did it go over?
Well, here's the thing. This story, it's always piqued people's interest. It's a good story, and I hope it does well. It's out there right now. The Run to Hell story, which is a story that starts with Grace Kelly, but moves on to Manuel Noriega because the Philadelphia mob family moved on to Manuel Noriega after Grace's death. Part one, we deal with Grace until she is murdered, her brother is murdered, and her brother-in-law is murdered. The story then takes you down to Panama, where we take a look at Manuel Noriega and what happens in that country.
Tell me, what do you think about a movie or a TV series being made about what you wrote about all of this?
There's enough material here for 2 stories.
What about the Grace Kelly portion?
Grace Kelly fits in there. It's in the same time period. We see Noriega in the 90s. Noriega's down there, and we send him down our American. But what he does during the period of time, during that same period of time, right after Grace is killed, is absolutely astounding, absolutely amazing.
What you have written, how would you tell people to find your book?
go to my website that has links to bookstores that sell the book. It has great information on there. Or just go to Amazon. They ship it the fastest and do it the best, as they do with most things anymore.
And the title, if people were interested?
The story with Grace Kelly and Manuel Noriega. That's called A Run to Hell. You're looking for the ebook or the print book. Fastest place to get it is Amazon.
Fred, this was fun talking to you. I would say, you're too much of a tease. You didn't get into on the recording about why the mafia would go after Grace Kelly. So what do I got to do?
That's all a book.
Yeah. All right. So you want me to buy the book? I'm doing this publicity.
You have to buy.
No, I want to know why they would kill, of all people, kill Grace Kelly. If they're going to kill someone, it would be Judy Garland or Marilyn Monroe. Wait, oh no, they did that. Sorry. You know what I'm saying?
It was all about the money. It's always about the money.
Right, but Marilyn Monroe
Money in the
was
casino.
different because it was the Kennedy brothers.
Yeah.
Judy Garland took her own self out,
Yeah.
drugs.
But you have to think about Monaco, and it was really Fort Knox with no guards. They were ready to move in and take that place over.
Well, after she is dead, right? Princess Grace, the mafia didn't come back in.
You're right. But
So what did they gain?
he turns around. He turns around after she dies and says, no, I'm going to fight this thing. And that's what he did. And he did get support. They kept them out of his casino.
Support from who? From Paris?
From the French, from other people. She went initially to the French. She went to a couple of people with the French police, and they were willing to talk to her. There was a story about how somebody involved with the French police just took it right to the Nice mob rather than take it back anywhere.
That's not surprising.
He went to the French, and they helped him out, and the mob stayed out of the casino. So it's a happy day for everyone in Monaco. I'd like to pay no taxes.
I think this would be there. I watch a lot of series on Netflix and Amazon, but does a bunch of them too. I think this would be a natural. The Grace Kelly part would be a natural because an American woman with a tragic, an ascension that is unheard of, and then a tragic.
And a beloved American woman too. She was,
Well, I just
many of us beloved like that.
So now I need to go back and watch To Catch a Thief because I don't remember anything. She was with Clark Gable as well in another one.
Yep. All her male leads were kind of embarrassed that she was so young and they were so old.
Yeah.
She never really matched up with somebody her own age on film.
But they all went to bed with her, so
Grace was her own woman.
And that's fine.
Grace.
That's fine. Fred, it's really been good talking to you.
It's been terrific. I like this.
All right.
It was great. Love you.
Thank you, Fred, so much.
Take care.
Thank you for talking to me. You take care.
This has been episode 1 of season 9 from the Taboo podcast series originating in Las Vegas, Nevada. The title of this episode was A Tragic Hollywood Princess. If you are interested in the book this episode highlighted, you can go to Amazon and search for author Frederick Schofield, and his book title is A Run to Hell. Thank you for listening to episode 1 of season 9 of the Taboo podcast series from Las Vegas.